Meditations with Ryan Slomek.
Hello and welcome to episode 50 of Meditations. I'm your host, Ryan Zlomek, and this is a show that for the past 49 episodes, and this one included, has been dedicated to making space for conversations with interesting people just to see what we can learn from one another. And to celebrate this monumentous occasion, this 50th episode, I bring on the person who is in charge of the most amazing show on dirt, or Taylor Swift Night, or Taco Tuesday, or Dollar Thursdays, or Fizzy Fridays with fireworks, or Kids Eat Free Sundays, Star Wars Day, Marvel Day, Education Day. All the days are sponsored by our good friend Jason Smorol, who is the general manager for the Syracuse Mets. He's been with them since 2013, and in these last 12 years has really helped make this baseball stadium a welcoming and exciting place for everybody. So I'm just stoked to bring this guy on the show and to figure out how we can make alternative spaces welcoming for everyone. So without further ado, here is Jason Smorol. Jason Smorol, one of my favorite people. I shaved my hair so we could have a similar haircut today.
Similar, but it looks like you actually have some under there, whereas mine is just skin.
Maybe. This could just be like a little Zoom mirage. I'm not sure. But at this point, it's two bald men talking to each other. And I wanna sort of start things off talking about you in your youth. You're a born and raised Central New Yorker, having grown up in North Syracuse and then attended Bishop Grimes. The only anecdote I've ever heard about your youth was that you had a bright red fro. And I'm curious if people were kind of like looking into a time machine and seeing what young Jason Smorol was up to. What were you up to in North Syracuse?
Well, not a bright red fro. I don't know if it was quite black hair, brown hair, it was brown, but it was a fro, and I was very proud of it. And it was we would pick it out. I had picks, and I had a pretty solid fro, and which is now obviously gone away. But yeah, North Syracuse kid. My father's from the West End. My mother's from the North Country, and they got together down here when she was teaching school. I have two older brothers and an older sister, and lived in North Syracuse, grew up in North Syracuse, was an Allen Road Alligator, would walk to school, and I became a St. Rose Raider, and that was kind of a feeder school for Bishop Grimes, the now defunct, soon-to-be defunct Bishop Grimes. So I'm proud Cobra, class of 87. And I was just a jerk. I was just a little rotten fat kid with a fro that told jokes and was just a chatterbox. Usually my seat was next to the teacher's desk because I was always talking apparently and probably disrupting class. I think in a positive way, but we'd have to go back and ask some of my elementary school teachers. Through middle school, most of the time my seat was directly next to the teacher's desk. I must have been a very special student. Just kind of a normal kid, I was a little chubster, played Little League baseball and tried the Royal Rangers. I wasn't like a Boy Scout or anything like that. Tried out for all the teams at St. Rose, but didn't make any of the teams. So I was often the manager of the basketball. I was the manager of the basketball team. And just had a great time growing up. I was very blessed to be with the family that I was born into. My dad was a dentist in North Syracuse, and I had a great life, a good family, and somehow I ended up like this.
I love it. I don't know if you're ever a little jerk. I can't picture that. Maybe pain, but jerk. I don't know if you have jerk in your soul.
I was like a miniature Shecky Green, just going around telling jokes.
Obviously, you developed a passion for baseball, and I want to get to that. But other than baseball, what sort of hobbies did you have as a kid?
It was sports. Entertainment, musical. I was, fishing. I grew up, on the St. Lawrence River. So boating and fishing and swimming and golfing and just, sports in general. That's kind of the way that I grew up and just always loved sports. Always wanted to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I stunk at sports. I had a really good time being the MC of the Greater Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame and being a little self-deprecating on my athletic career of how poorly we did at Bishop Grimes during my time as we honored all the other great teams in the area. But, sports was a big part of my life, and being a member of a team and that whole teamwork and knowing your roles, that was a big part of my upbringing.
I love it. So you just talked about wanting to play for the Steelers. Did baseball always sort of float to the top for you, or was it, was football really where it's at?
Breaking news. I was never the biggest baseball fan in the world. I loved baseball. I wanted to play. I played Little League Baseball in the North Syracuse Little League, played for Homer Gears. I remember Homer Gears Insurance, specifically baseball team that I played on, and going to Big Dip after the games and Temple Farms and all those things in the North Syracuse Little League. But it was football, and that I wanted to play and loved the most and went to most games. And you'll find that the people here, we joke because we do love baseball, but the ones that are the best here are the ones that I always say that don't like baseball. But we all like baseball, but the people that like baseball want to watch baseball. We're here to work, so I'm more interested in people that want to work in sports than that say they love baseball, because those are the ones you got to watch out for, because they're actually going to be too busy watching the game when we have actual work to do.
Thank you for giving us a little piece of your managerial insight. We'll get a little bit more into that as
Don't be coming in here saying, I love baseball. I've always wanted to work in a baseball team. Yeah, that guy's going to watch the baseball game.
Well, I want to you mentioned the Big Dip. I just got to give a shout out to that place real quick. One of my friends recently made a reference that getting some sort of like slushy Dole Whip thing was one of his like prison last meal goals. And I was like, I've never heard anybody say that about an ice cream place. Shout out to the Big Dip. So moving forward, you end up going to Bishop Grimes. I'm just seeing as, the school's going to be closing at the end of the year. I figure spending a little bit of time here would be useful. What was your experience like at Bishop Grimes when you were there and you're kind of figuring yourself out as a student? Like, what did you spend your time doing, and what did you really enjoy about your time there?
It was a great time. I cherished it. Thought Grimes was the perfect school. It was the perfect place for me. As a feeder school, a lot of the St. Rose kids would go there. The St. Margaret's kids would go there. The Blessed Sacrament kids would go there. And so we knew we already had people that you knew there. So it wasn't like you're going into a new structure. My sister was a couple of years ahead of me, so I knew all the kids in her grade, the grade directly ahead of me. A bunch of St. Rose guys that I knew. So you already had familiarity with people there. And then we just made great friends and instant connections through sports, through football. Football started. You want to be on the football team? My friend Mike Burns said, I'm on the football team. You're going to be on the football team, because he was a year ahead of me. So, we all went off for the football team, and we all made the football team. I think everybody made the football team because they needed bodies, but we're all on the JV team. They didn't have a freshman. We didn't have enough kids for a freshman team, I don't think, at the time. We just played JV. And through football and through sports, you all of a sudden you get a bunch of new friends. All the kids from Blessed Sacrament and some kids from Eastwood and whoever else was on the team, and you got a band of brothers, and then school starts and you've already got a leg up because you've been in double sessions since August. You're more familiar with the school. First day is you've been there for 2 or 3 weeks through football. Looking back, it's just one of the best 4 years of my life. I'm still friends to this day with so many kids from my class, the class behind us, the class ahead of us, my sister's class. Every Thursday night here is a Bishop Grimes reunion of people that I see here at the stadium. We've stayed in touch after, we're talking 35 years, and every single night I'm on a text chain with some high school buddies. I have you have a text chain with your college buddies. You got a text chain with your high school buddies. We're still together. We're still hanging out. We still see each other. And it was about 160, 170 kids at the time. I think I graduated with about 160 kids, probably started with closer to 200. You end up with some things less than that. So it was a perfect size school. We did dances. We got a chance to do everything we wanted. We got to play every sport. If you were good enough, you could play every sport. If you were not good enough, you could play a lot of sports. And we could do chorus, and we could be in the plays, and the education was great. You take the classes of language and science. Mr. Daly, our physics teacher, was amazing, and the religion classes, didn't just hammer Catholicism. You learned about Buddhism, and you learned about Islam, and you learned about Judaism and all that stuff. So it was a good time to be at Bishop Grimes.
I love it. Well, thanks for giving that insight. When you were at Bishop Grimes, did you find yourself taking on any sort of sports leadership?
Sports leadership, I don't know. I'm always kind of a louder person. I was never the captain of the teams, but not. I was the class president my senior year. But sports leadership, no. Just played on the teams, played football, played on the golf team. We did the wrestling team. We were on the track team. We would try out for basketball. We would try out for baseball, but much smaller teams. They didn't need the bodies, so they didn't need the. It was a big day if you made it to if you made it past the first day in the basketball team, because we were good in basketball. That was like a big deal. And baseball, I could hit, but I couldn't catch.
We were talking before this interview about the fact that Jason always like sends accolades elsewhere. And I gotta say, like, okay, maybe you weren't captain of the football team, but like being class president of your 160 plus person group of people, I think is a pretty solid accolade.
I was funny enough, and then I knew everybody, so they voted for me.
Maybe it was the hair. Was it the hair?
Maybe. It was nice. Janelle Tendra used to like to pick it out in the senior lounge. Senior lounge was the cafeteria, just when it wasn't the cafeteria time.
Well, you're a master of transforming spaces, so that seems like a good insight into that. You ended up going to SUNY Fredonia and studying communication. I promise, we're not going to go through every step of your career. But in regards to SUNY Fredonia, I also attended there, but only for a year. And I was curious about like what was your sort of career aspiration at that point, going for communications? Like, what did you want to do?
Game show host. So I wanted to be a game show host. I love game shows. And I was like, you know what? That'd be a great job. I'd love to be a game show host. So I went there, communications, did a little bit of TV, worked for the college station, did some bad game shows on the college station. But again, loved Fredonia. Sports, was probably the tie that binded at Fredonia, because I started playing rugby my freshman year. And you have immediate band of brothers. You have a bunch of friends that you just immerse yourself in, and like I said before, I still have a text chain going. I have a couple different text chains going with different college buddies that we still stay in touch with after all these years.
Didn't you end up becoming like a member of a championship rugby team?
I did end up being a member of a championship rugby team when I was going in Mobile, Alabama for my sports management degree. I only put that in there because we had a much better rugby player on our staff at the time. Clint Cure was like a real rugby player. I mean, I played a lot of rugby, but he was hardcore, probably much better than I did, like international rugby and all that stuff. So just all of a sudden happened to end up in my bio that, I'm a member of the 1992 Battleship Men's Division II National Champions, Clint. Are you a national champion, Clint?
Sometimes people got to know that,
And I got a text chain with those guys.
Apparently you're spending all your time sending memes to people. Eventually, it seems like you maybe got out of the game show host headspace and then decided that
I think I'm a game show host right now.
You could be. Are you definitely stealing the show on this episode? But you kind of shift yourself to sports management and then decide to eventually go to, I think the name has since changed, but the United States Sports University. What made you decide that going the sports management route was how you wanted to sort of finalize your education?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I finished my college, and wasn't going to become a game show host. Really just had a good time in college with not a really hard focus on, what I wanted to do in life. Came back home to Syracuse, was selling stuff, was working for I'm Smart at the time, selling I'm Smart, which was ahead of its time and an awesome program. And I went back to college and spoke to one of my professors, and she told me about the United States Sports Academy, and she knows that I always loved sports. She said it was an interesting option, and I went down there to get my master's in sports management. And it was a good experience, great experience. Again, could go start playing rugby down there, immediate band of brothers, bunch of friends, something to do. And when you're there for your master's, you're a little bit more focused on the actual education portion of it than maybe a lot of your undergrad stuff. So I got kind of locked in, really enjoyed it, and did some different internships at the Mobile Civic Center and had an opportunity to work for the Mobile Bay Bears. And I had the opportunity to work for the Watertown Indians and did a summer with the Watertown Indians as my internship for school, and fell in love with minor league baseball. I just absolutely loved it and knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Quick question about your time in your master's program. Like when people hear sports management programs, they're, obviously all of them have different sort of like missions and theories and approaches to what they do. That school seems to have a pretty interesting history, having started in 1972, and like really the laundry list of just amazing coaches and trainers that have come from that school. And if I understand, it started because the creator of it discovered some sort of like, he was unhappy with the US's performance in an Olympics, and then ended up
Dr. Rosandich.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about like having been at this school. Like, what was the sort of approach to the education there, and what were the big sort of takeaways that were valuable to you?
They were definitely big in the Olympic arena, international sports, sports art, but it was really designed for a lot of coaches and teachers that needed to get their masters, that in the summertime that they could get their masters and then continue on in high school and coaching and college and coaching. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing in all the different disciplines, to what it is today, which I believe is the United States Sports University. There was an online component back in the day, and then an actual in-class component. Probably at the time, a lot of them were there for coaching. A lot of them were there for physical, sports training and therapy, and then I was there for sports management. The thing about, sports management is it's really, if you're not going with the coaching side or the training side or the psychology side, the management side is a business degree. You want to do something that specializes in sports, management, or at the end of the day, it's really just a business degree to how to run a business. But the United States Sports Academy gave you all the other stuff that went with it. So you had to do sports psychology and sports law and sports, obviously management classes, but sports arts and even, biology of sports. So it was very nice and well-rounded, well-intended school, definitely devoted to the international aspect of sports, because sport can take you anywhere you want to go in the world. We have these education days here, and we try to impart on the 12, 14,000 kids that get to come here, over the course of those 2 days, that to take a look at the world. Everything you want to do in the world can be done essentially in sports, whether you want to be in sports, in medicine, you could be a doctor, you could be a sports, doctor. You want to be you like growing things, we turf management, we manage the horticulture. If you love the culinary arts, we make a lot more than just hot dogs and hamburgers, but making hot dogs and hamburgers for 10,000 people in 2.5 hours takes a lot of work to do. So anything you want to do in the world, if you love numbers and accounting, but you happen to love sports, be an accountant for a sports team, So anything you can do in the world, you can do right here in the world of sports. And that was imparted to me and at the U.S. Sports Academy, and that's the message that we try to get out to the kids still today.
I love it. So you end up going to Watertown, working with the Watertown Indians, first as an intern, and then if I understand, they ended up creating a position, or you created a position called the Director of Special Projects.
Well, I just kept showing up. They weren't paying me anything, and I just kept showing up, and I had a couple of great old school operators, Jack Trotz and Jeff Dumas, and they liked to go bet on the ponies, and there wasn't a lot to do in the wintertime for a short season. So I said, well, if you're going to keep showing up, you can just kind of answer the phones and watch the office. We're going to go to the off-track betting. And they would take off, and I would answer the phones and just kept showing up. They're like, all right, you're the Director of Special Projects. I said, okay. So Special Projects was, that was operations. That was picking up the garbage, setting up the things for the game, moving stuff around, cleaning the stadium, stuff like that.
What made you fall in love with minor league baseball?
Dynamite Lady blew herself up. It was the final straw. Dynamite Lady came to the stadium. My buddy and I, the Valentino, were there as interns. He's much smarter than I am. He got into medical device sales and has had a wonderful life and career and enjoys his summers on his boat at the St. Lawrence River while I'm down here shucking hot dogs on Thursdays. But Dynamite Lady came, and her act was to put herself in a box at the end of the game and blow herself up. She'd put 4 sticks of dynamite on the outsides of her box and blow herself up. And every night, my boss, Jack Trotz, would have me sit at the gate and thank people for coming and just be there to see if anybody had any problems, and we could take them back to to try to make it better the next day. So Dynamite Lady came in. She had her glittery little American outfit, red, white, and blue glittery, and she hung out and she signed autographs during the game. And then the game ended. We wheeled her box out. She got in her box. She goes into her box, blows up, shakes the whole stadium. Smoke fills the stadium, tiny little stadium. And when the smoke clears, she's standing there in her red, white, and blue, little skimpy, glittery outfit. Everybody goes bananas. I'm sitting at the front gate, shaking everybody's hands, and I just saw everybody just smiling, happy, coming out with their family, their friends, and everyone just saying what a great time they had. It was a great game. Dynamite Lady was amazing. This lady blew herself up. And I said, this is what I want to do. We just made, 1,000 people happy. They just came here. They spent their hard-earned money. They're walking out of here with a smile on their face because they just had a great time. And that's what sold me on minor league baseball. That's what I still love about it today, is that when we're at our best, we have an effect on people. People, really like what we do, and we can do good, and we can unite communities. And at the end of the night, I still sit out there and I shake hands and I thank people for coming, and I stand right out there if they want to yell at me about something. But 99 times out of 100, they're thanking us because the staff did a good job, because they had a great time. They're walking out with their family, their friends, their kids. I asked the little kids if they had a good time. They had a good time. The fireworks were amazing. I love the hot dogs. Scooch is the best. And not a lot of jobs do you get that immediate gratification on a nightly basis.
What was the sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, like management structure at the time at this place with the Indians? Like, you talked about having kind of two old school manager and assistant manager, and then you kind of filling in the gaps. I mean, how big was this operation?
It was the three of us. We had one office. It was rinky dink, old school minor league baseball. I've been up there to Watertown, and the offices are the same. You could see the ticket office. I mean, it was the general manager's office, the ticket office. And that's what minor league baseball was, and to a certain extent still is. Smaller organizations where everybody gets to do a lot, which is what we like about it, is that we're not in silos. We're all involved in everything. We just all had a staff meeting. Everybody gets to throw in their ideas or say this is good or this is bad. Everybody wears multiple hats, and it's a lot. It can take its toll on you, but it's also, what we love. We do everything in-house. We do our own marketing. We do our own sales. We do our own accounting. We do our own graphic design. We do our own social media. We do our own food. We do everything. So it's fun, and the variety is fun. But the structure of the Watertown Indians, I don't know. There were 17 owners, and they had so many owners because they said, with all these owners, we'll never sell it. We'll always be here in Watertown. There are no more Watertown Indians. It was sold, and it became the Staten Island Yankees. There is a non-affiliated baseball team in Watertown right now.
Fascinating. Yeah, I was reading about that, about how, wasn't it something about almost the identity of them, and then like this Oneonta team flip-flopped and then headed down to Staten Island to create the Staten Island Yankees?
Oneonta, old Sam Nader didn't want to sell. The Oneonta Yankees at the time were in the same county as Cooperstown, and Sam felt there needed to be professional baseball in, was that Otsego County? I'm not sure wherever Cooperstown is, and he wouldn't sell. Could have made millions of dollars. Then wasn't going to sell. So they bought the Watertown Indians because Brooklyn was going into Coney Island. And if the Mets were there, then the Yankees had to be there. So they had to find a team. So they bought the Watertown Indians. The Getzlers bought the Watertown Indians, had one final year in Watertown, and then went to Staten Island, of which I went with them. I was at the Batavia Muckdogs at the time, and then I went to the Staten Island Yankees in '99 after 3 years in Batavia.
Well, I want to talk about Batavia real quick, which is, so one of the things I find really fascinating about the world of minor league baseball is the fact that, there's always jokes about teams switching cities and whatever. And like, as I was researching you, like, that is a very real thing in upstate New York. I mean, like, finding out how quickly stadiums turn over or how quickly teams kind of shift around. But sometimes, like, things get created at these places that we can't get away from. And I managed to discover a baseball card that you were on with the assistant general manager for the Batavia Muckdogs that describes you, gives you the name of Love Train. I've known you for a good long time, but I've never ever called you Love Train.
Nobody does. It's not even an official nickname.
Well, so what's the story on Jason Love Train Smorol?
We just thought that we needed nicknames, and I never had a nickname. I loved Love Train by the OJs. That would be my walk-up song if I had a walk-up song. And we just wanted to be silly and dumb, and he was Steve Sugar Lennox. I still give everybody nicknames. Steve Sugar Lennox, and he should have listened to me because everybody named Sugar is famous. Sugar Ray, all the boxers are Sugar. They're all famous. Bert Sugar. Anybody named Sugar is famous. So Steve Sugar Lennox, had he enveloped and dove headfirst into the nickname Sugar, would probably be on Sports Center right now. He decided to stay regular old Steve Lennox, and he's a very successful broadcaster in his own right. But he would have been much better. I tell him all the time if he would have really dug into Sugar, because people love people named Sugar. So I just for a goof, I think of that card says I'm the Love Train, and then I make my own shoes and my glasses, so I have them, which I stole from the Jerky Boys. And to this day, I get people mail me that to get a signature on it, and then they want me to send it to Steve Lennox so he gets a signature on it, and they can complete their 1997 Batavia Muckdog card set or something like that.
Well, I can tell you that the world of eBay is ripe with those cards. So if anybody really needs to start a collection, you can get some Love Train and some Sugar without a problem.
And I still stay in touch with Steve Sugar Lennox to this day.
You're really good at making friends, my friend.
Well, they're good people, and you go through these. Once you go through these, these minor league seasons, and it's probably very similar with all kind of sports. You do it for a couple of years with people. You get a special bond, of going through the trenches with these people.
I love it. I'm going to ask a couple more questions about just sort of your placements because I'm curious about them. But we talked about you going to Staten Island and working for the Staten Island Yankees, which there's articles written about you. There seems to be like a really interesting time. But from what I understand, you ended up focusing your attention on concessions.
Well, I started in Watertown so the second year I was the director of special projects. The third year I became the concession manager because a couple of days before opening day, the concession manager got hit by a bus and died. And I had worked in the restaurant business, so Jack Trout said, "Oh, you were a bartender. Good, you're the concession manager now." So I was the concession manager. And Sean Smith, who was in Auburn, was going to Batavia, he said, "Hey, I'm looking for a concession manager. I want you to come and be my concession manager." I said, "Well, I'll be your assistant general manager, but I'm not going to just go there to be a concession manager. I'm already a concession manager." He said, "Great, you'll be the assistant general manager in charge of concessions." So I went to Batavia to do concessions and assorted other things as the assistant general manager. And then when he left to go to, he went after 1 year in Batavia, he left to go to Lowell with a bigger team and a new stadium. And they hired me as the general manager. So then I was the general manager in charge of concessions. And, concessions is my background, small stadiums. And we did hire another concession manager, Smoking Joe Henderson. And when I went to Staten Island in '99, after 3 years in Batavia, it was the Watertown people. It was Jeff Dumas was still there. I said, "Listen, we're going to Staten Island. We need to bring people we know and bring people we can trust. You want to come and be the assistant general manager?" I was a general manager. I'm going back to assistant general manager. I'm going back and run the concessions, but it was paying a lot more than general manager in Batavia. I said, "I would love to go be the assistant general manager in charge of concessions." So that was an interesting year because it was a temporary stadium and everything was new and it was just on the fly and rush, hurry. And that was an interesting year.
And it kind of had to be the shining star for the Yankees. Like it had to be a success story because they, it was partially a PR move as well. Is that fair to say?
And the Yankees were part owners. So, most of the time the Major League team is not the owner of the minor league team. Like I said, in Watertown was the 17 people. Then they sold it to the Getzlers. Sam Nader owned the Oneonta Yankees. At the time, Syracuse at that time was community owned. Most teams were not owned by the Major League team, but when to get the Staten Island team in there, I think Staten Island the Yankees maybe owned 49% of the team, and the Getzlers retained 51%. So yeah, it was important to get it right. Brooklyn was doing well. They had a nice brand new stadium. There were still the planning stages for the new stadium that Staten Island was supposed to get. So it was an important time, for baseball, in New York State and minor league baseball across the country.
And what, like, being the assistant manager in charge of concessions, I got to make sure I get all these things right.
I was just the assistant general manager who happened to be in charge of concessions.
I love it. So in regards to the concession aspect, what were your responsibilities? What were you doing?
Oh, you got to get the health permits, you got to do the safe serve, you got to set up the point of sale systems, all the inventory, all the ordering, all the inventory, hire all the staff, schedule all the staff, and then get it all ready and make sure you're all ready to go for a homestand. Make sure you have enough product. When things break, you got to fix it. You just got to run. Baseball business, sports in general is a weird business because in many aspects you're a restaurant, and Your restaurant is a dinner theater and there's a cover charge, and your entertainment is the baseball game or the football game or the hockey game. And you have to serve, your restaurant's open. Our current restaurant is open 75 days a year, and it's open for 2.5 to 3 hours. And some nights there's 10,000 people there that you have to serve, and everything has to be right. So it's a different kind of service in these sports stadiums. And baseball is a little bit different. You can imagine, football game, you imagine hockey game. Football, you eat first and you eat at halftime, and then you're done. You don't eat anymore. Basketball game's kind of the same way. You get there, you have something to eat at halftime, and you're pretty much done. Baseball, there's nothing to do. You have 9 innings of eating, and the last call doesn't happen until the 7th inning, and then so there's a rush when people get in here, and there's a rush in the 3rd inning, and there's a rush in the 5th inning, and there's a rush in the 7th inning, and we have suites and hospitality. So when we're packed out, we've got next week, we've got some big days next week. We've got Pride Day, we've got Cancer Survivor Night, we got Little League Night. We'll have 6, 7, 8,000 people in the ballpark. We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hospitality areas. We'll have 19 suites, all full. The gates are going to open. They open early that day, but the food service, for all the hospitality, everything takes place from 6:30 until 9 o'clock. And then you got to get it all cleaned up and spick and span, because there's a game the next day. So, we're open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's Groundhog's Day, but you got to plan, and then you might have all this stuff, and it might rain on us, and maybe nobody comes on Little League night. Ugh, and that's just the worst. Then you just let these people down. These people are counting, they want to have a nice party, but hey, man, I'm going to tell you, your party's outside and it's raining. So, there's definite challenges to it, but concessions is a big part of it. This is a large stadium, so we don't do it ourselves per se. We have a partner called Oakview Group. There's the Aramarks of the world, there's the Legends of the world, there's the Delaware Norths of the world, and they specialize in concessions. But we're lockstep with them and a partner with them. And on those busy nights, myself and Pops, we're not afraid to get back in there and help them run food or wrap hot dogs, or if I see a Dollar Thursday cart where that line is all the way down, I'll just jump on there and start telling jokes and helping out by opening hot dog buns. And it can really, if someone that knows what they're doing can get in there, you can really move those lines really fast. You have to have a sense of urgency, in this business.
One last question before we get to the Syracuse Mets, which is you ended up taking over and being general manager of the Auburn Doubledays. But one other thing that I picked up somewhere was that you also were teaching at SUNY Cortland for a little while.
It was. So I was, after the year at Staten Island, I decided to consider teaching sports management. The lovely Rachel, now Rachel Smorol, was in my life, and we took a little sabbatical and we went down south. I went back to work on my doctorate at the United States Sports Academy. We ended up in Savannah, and she was working for UPS, and I was doing some online classes and working at a shipyard, kind of like yachts. And I was a master's carpenter's apprentice for beautiful 300-foot yachts, working on my doctorate. And I ended up, teaching. I did not finish my doctorate. Dr. Rosandich and I had some disagreements. And I ended up teaching at SUNY Cortland, being an adjunct professor of sports management, working with their interns. I taught a little bit at Tompkins Community College. And through the placement of interns, Auburn fired their general manager. I was teaching for about a year, and they asked me if I would be the general manager. I tried to do both, teach and do the double days, but it was just too much. So I stopped the teaching aspect because I really loved and missed minor league baseball. So I ended up running the Auburn Doubledays from 2001, 2, and 3.
Okay, and just in regards to your teaching, I'm just curious, like, you're one of those people that I can just picture you being a great teacher. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that you're probably not a little jerk in the classroom, if we're going to stick with the reference from earlier. You're probably just, getting people jazzed. And I'm just curious about, like, how you ran your classroom. Like, if I was a student in, with Jason Smorol, what am I picking up?
I thought it was being real. It wasn't so much the theory of sport; it was the actual what it's like. At least in my opinion of what it's like in the real world. Versus the theoretical world of sports management. And I took a couple of classes, and internship practicum was a bigger one that I was in charge of. And I had one. I have one great student. I have a couple of them. I don't know, there's a couple of them, but the one that is by far the best is Anthony Sprague, the general manager of the Buffalo Bisons, because he's the only one that listened to it and say, y'all want to go there, y'all want to be, say, I want to do public relations, I want to do marketing. I was like, that might be fine for the Pittsburgh Steelers and New York Yankees, but you got to work your way up. You got to get your foot in the door. If you go on these internship and job interviews, you tell them you want to sell, and you sell, they're going to hire you. And if you sell, you're going to succeed rapidly through the ranks. And he's the only one that listened to me. He went in that interview with the Buffalo Bisons. He said, I want to sell. They said, kid, you're hired. They put him into ticket sales, and he started to sell. And X many years later, he was the assistant general manager, and now he's the general manager. He calls me the professor. And there's another person. She's like the director of operations for the Super Bowl. She said there was a magazine article out there where she gave me credit for a great speech that I gave at a class. I don't even know her. I can't remember her name, about how you gotta, I have to keep this family friendly. You gotta keep the bathrooms clean. And I can imagine what I said, because it was probably due to a story that I would tell from the Staten Island days of keeping the bathrooms clean. But she credits that with her inspiration to work in operations, and she's risen to like running the Super Bowl.
Well, you gave me a really beautiful segue to touch on something that I wasn't sure we were going to touch on, which is that you stepped away from baseball for about a decade, which to me is just like my heart is like hurting, and I'm just trying to figure out what happened. But you ended up working for Hilti, doing, was it sales for power tools?
Yeah. Yeah. So, we got married in 2001, and little Julia Grace Smorol was born in 2003, and we just started having a little family. And that life of, there's not a great work-life balance in the minor leagues. Rachel and I just decided it was best to, focus on the family a little bit more than just me goofing around in Auburn on Dollar Thursdays with a cardboard box we titled Hot and Her, and he was also the assistant general manager, and we'd bring Hot and Her to different locations. And Hot and Her might have a baseball card. I'm not 100% sure, but Hot and Her was great. And it was just more important to, start a family and have a little bit more family time. So that's what we did, and it was great. And I knew these people from Hilti through different events at college, goes back to college, with some relationships that I built, and we had some Hilti events at some of our baseball stadiums. I interviewed and got the job, and and enjoyed it. I really liked working for Hilti. A lot of people wanted to know why I worked so hard, and I thought it was the easiest job I've ever had, because it wasn't minor league baseball. You got up and you started at 7:30, and you were done at, the jobs were done at 3:30. You might take some phone orders to 5:30. You had your weekends to yourself. You're driving around talking to people. We were like Avon ladies for construction workers, and I loved it. And it was great. I thought I'd be with Hilti for many, many, many more years. Took a $500,000 territory and turned it into a $1.5 million territory, just by being personable and doing the same thing, we do here at baseball, and the same things travel to any job. Just have integrity, do what you say you're going to do, work hard, work smart, and and listen to your customer. And the Hilti would want me to sell X, Y, and Z products, but my customers wanted A, B, and C products. I sold them A, B, and C products. And you hit your number, they leave you alone.
I always get a kick out of people. Like, one of the things that I appreciate about minor league baseball is the fact, and you've referenced it multiple times, the fact that you have to be a jack of all trades. Like, you have to do every single job, and you have to do it with enthusiasm, and you have to do it right. Or if you don't know how to do it right, you need to find a solution to make it so it's right. And I feel like people who are in those types of environments, to the surprise of no one, I feel very similar in education. You then end up in another spot where maybe it's a more niche skill set or something like that. And to you, it's vacation. And to the rest of the world, they just look at it and they say like, why is this person like burning themselves out? But I think there's just something beautiful about being able to have that perspective when you're in any sort of position and being like, all right, the grass may not necessarily be greener. It's just a different type of problem solving. And here's how I'm going to find joy with it right here.
Exactly. And the grass isn't always greener everywhere else. And it's nice to bring that minor league perspective to Hilty. But then it was great to learn about Hilty. And then when I got back into the Mets, Chiefs at the time, to bring that perspective of a global company really aided me in me being able to succeed here in Syracuse at the AAA level.
Well, let's talk about that because I want to set the scene a little bit because I'm not sure you get enough credit for this. The Syracuse Chiefs at the time, it was 2013, and they had been managed by pretty much the same family for about 4 decades. And then they made the decision to move on to different management. And you get a call, if I understand correctly, saying, hey, you should apply for this job. Having been, lingering on the sidelines of Major League Baseball, kind of stepping away from it for about a decade, how did you end up getting that call? Like, how did you end up being the person that they thought would fit the bill?
I have no idea. Bill Dutch is out of his mind, and I love him for it. He was on the board of directors, president of the team. Bill had met me at that time, in 2013. He met me probably 10 years earlier when I was still in Auburn. And he, had the idea of bringing me over to the Chiefs back then. We met with a couple of people, never worked out. I never thought that I'd ever see Bill Dutch ever again. And one day I was coming back from camp and working on it was a Sunday. I was just kind of working on my computer, getting ready for the week ahead. And I see a Facebook friend request from Bill Dutch. I'm like, yeah, Bill Dutch. I haven't heard that guy's name in a long time. Ignored it. And then Rachel said, hey, the phone rang. She says, oh, there's some guy on the phone, but his name is Bill Dutch. I said, hey, Bill Dutch, how you doing? He said, great, Jason. How you doing? I said, super awesome. So I'd like to be the general manager of the Syracuse Chiefs. I said, hold on a second. I said, honey, can I go be the general manager of the Syracuse Chiefs? She's like, sure, why not? I was like, that sounds great, Bill Dutch. So I went to the interview the next day, had my Hilty clothes on, went there in my Hilty van, because I had a job that I loved. I loved working for Hilty. Hilty is a fantastic company. 10 years later, I still bleed red. I will tell you right now that I just gave a Ramset guy a rash of trouble. They were having a party here at the stadium. I was telling him how his product is junk compared to Hilty. He wasn't super excited about it, but whatever. I get a lot of leeway around here. And it was the best interview of my life because I had a job that I loved. And they asked me what I thought of the Syracuse Chiefs. And I said, I think the Syracuse Chiefs are boring. I live 3 miles from them, and I go to the Auburn Doubledays, bring my little girls to baseball games there. I said, you guys aren't in the baseball business. You need to figure out you're in the entertainment business. And the sooner you guys figure that out, the better off you're going to be. And I tell the story that they were dumb enough to offer me the job, and I was dumb enough to take it. 12 years later, I'm still here.
Did you sell them power tools at that meeting?
They didn't have the need for power tools, but I have had Hilty here. I did sell a power tool here. I didn't even work for a company. They were doing the construction project here. I watched these guys drilling a hole, and they were taking forever. I was like, you guys are morons. I go, you talk to Hilty. Like, actually, we got a problem. We need to drill a hole. I was like, I called the Hilty guy up, Mike Howe. I said, Mike, you got a drill? He's like, yeah, I'll be right over. He came over. I said, Hilty's going to, you have been drilling that hole. I go, we're going to get through that hole in 6 minutes or something like that. So he drills the hole. We said we had to drill 12-inch hole. Drills the hole, and it takes like 7 minutes or something like that. And the guy stops us. He goes, stop. I go, what are you stopping us for? He goes, I needed a 12-inch hole. How long is that drill bit? It was like 30 inches. He goes, 30 inches. Because you guys drilled through the concrete, through a piece of rebar, and then more concrete in 6 minutes. He says, can you do it dustless? It'd be great if you could do that dustless. I go, you're falling right into our trap. I hadn't worked in Hilty for 6 years or something like that at the time. I was like, Mike, can you do this dustless? He's like, yes, I can. And it was great. And so Mike sold an $1,800 drill that day.
I love it. Well, see, you're always selling. So you just made the comment that, at your interview, you referenced the fact that, they feel they're in the baseball business, but not in the entertainment business. And clearly your approach, your mindset shift has been really successful. I think I read at one point that like the moment you were stepping into the Syracuse Chiefs, their attendance was the lowest it had been in 17 years. And obviously it's huge now. I heard somewhere else that like the number of attendees is higher than SU sports, which is insane. But stepping in that first year in 2013, what were the sort of like main, I guess, squeaky wheels that you wanted to put some grease on and start to shift things around?
You had to just change the culture of the team. There was free tickets all over town. The team was losing money. You can't sell free tickets. The thing about that I learned from Hilty is that you got to believe in your product. We had the most expensive drill. If you want to drill through that wall and a piece of rebar, and less time it takes to do it with another time because you're paying that worker, 60, 70, 80, $90 an hour, and you have to 10,000 holes to drill. You can drill them in half the amount of time with a Hilty product. How much is that drill worth? So you got to believe in your product. And if you build a good enough product, people will pay for a ticket, and it gets down to good dollar value, which is what I learned from my father, is that you give somebody good product at a good price and they'll be happy for it. They'll walk out of the stadium at the end of the night with a smile on their face, spending their hard-earned money. You got to understand, these people are they earn this money. They're choosing to come here. They don't have to come here. It's not like a car. It's not like insurance. It's not like, going to the doctor. Those are things you have to do. You don't have to go to a Syracuse Mets game. It's a choice. And we better make it awesome. And we don't control the weather. If we did, it would be better this April and May. We don't control what goes on the field. We don't select the players. So all we can control is the food, the cleanliness of the stadium, the promotions, our customer service, and and how we go out and asking people to come to the stadium. So that's what I learned, what I knew, and then what I also learned from Hilty is that be the best, outwork, outperform, work hard, things that were familiar to minor league baseball and people that wanted to work in minor league baseball. And we were the team that shouldn't be. I mean, the team was on its ropes. The team had been losing money. The team had been, in dire straits, and this was the last shot. And it is definitely not me. People like Bill Dutch and Paul Solomon, Jack Webb, Joe Janowski, and Crandall Melvin and Bob Skelly, the members of the board that were courageous enough to stick through it and have skin in the game, and Dan McNeil and Bob Julian, and those are the people that took the reins and took a chance on me, and we all worked together with the vision and the goal of saving the team, getting it in a financial place where it could continue to be here, because we worked for the shareholders of the team. There was 5,000 shareholders. My father was one of them. He bought a share in 1961 for $10, and our whole lives growing up, we'd get the letter for shareholders night, and he'd take it out of the kitchen table, and he'd tell us what a savvy investor he was, because his share of the Syracuse Chiefs was worth $125. We had 10 tickets to go to shareholders night, and we went, and it was awesome. So we always thought it was cool. Oh, Dad's the owner of the Syracuse Chiefs. But that was the mentality. And the people that are here now are the people that were there then. So Katie Berger was the intern, and Bill Ryan was an intern, and Kathleen McCormick was our sales team, and Julie Cardinelli was our sales team at the time. Will Camiso was on the grounds crew. He's now the director of ticket operations. So we've gone through this together, and we're all still together, and we're all still grinding. And it's now Katie's the assistant general manager. Will's the director of ticket operations, and Bill Ryan's the director of hospitality. And we've all kind of grown up together. And those kids now have kids. Bill Ryan's got a little baby, and Katie Stewart's got a little baby. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm lucky to have been able to go on it. Hopefully it's going to keep going on for a little longer.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I mean, I guess my question, just to stay at the beginning real quick, is that 2013, you're brought in, you mentioned that it's, dire straits. How many years was it before you felt you were kind of in the clear and that you were doing the right thing and you could see a trajectory upward?
In 2013, these numbers are vague. 2013 team lost about $1 million. 2014, my first year, we announced 100,000 less people, and we lost $250,000. We lost $750,000 less. Third year, we announced we lost $169,000, and the third year we were profitable. So we made great strides, great changes, and the attendance, the team kept getting worse. Luckily, in my first year, the team was awesome. We went to the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. We won the division for the first time in 25 years, and we still had what we had, and that was awesome, and then the next year we were 10 games out of first place. The next year we were 20 games out of first place. And each year we kept getting less wins and more people because, our vision worked out. We were in the entertainment business, Dollar Thursdays, Kids Eat Free Sundays. We just did low cost promotions. What were we doing back then? We were doing tattoo night, and we were doing cowboy monkeys, and mullet night, and ugly sweater night, and we brought in some old friends. Sean Smith, the aforementioned guy that hired me and brought me to Batavia, was a consultant. He came in to kind of train the squad. Missy Martin came in to train the squad on how to sell group seats, and we had other consultants that came in to kind of show us the new ropes of how to get people to come to stadiums, because we just do what the other minor league baseball teams do. If it's successful in Rochester, it's going to be successful here. We don't compete with the Rochester Red Wings. We don't compete with the Buffalo Bisons. If it's going to work for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, it's going to work for us. So we just really embrace that minor league mantra, embrace that we're going to do what they say can't be done, and we're going to turn this thing around. And it wasn't for certain because, we didn't have an owner. We couldn't go to any of those 5,000 shareholders and ask them for the capital it needed to really infuse and make this thing run. We were just kind of treading water and staying viable, and then when the board of directors, found a suitor that would do what we needed to be done, which was, have the capital and the wherewithal to really do what needed to be done here. They sold the team to the New York Mets. That's what really ensured and saved this team. We made it tread water, and they saved the team by finding the perfect suitor for them, because the Mets want to be in Syracuse, extended the lease till 2043, got the money from the state and the county to revitalize and renovate the stadium, and here we are. So now, with all of those things, those elements, those dominoes, you put all those things together, and we became a viable business, solid for the future. Once we really sold it to the Mets, and we got the new stadium, now we're rocking and rolling.
Well, awesome. I appreciate it. I got 3 last questions for you, Jason. The first one is, you've done such a great job of talking about the sort of entertainment of things and the operation of things. One of the components that I think is really important about the way in which you run the Syracuse Mets is that I see you being like such a phenomenal community liaison, just in the sense that, oftentimes there's sports teams that just exist within towns and they're just there. There's sports teams that exist within towns and they feel like they're distanced. And then there's you, which is you oversee a sports team and a sports facility that feels like it's welcoming to all. And I always see you kind of going out in the community to bring parts of that to the stadium, whether it's finding ways for different community groups to throw the first pitch, or getting concessions that are local favorites like Recess Coffee. And I'm just kind of curious about your outreach approach to making sure that the city of Syracuse feels connected to the Syracuse Mets.
Our name was the Community Baseball Club of Central New York. That was the official name. This is our business. This is our market. This is, this is what we can do. When we talked about earlier about what I love best about this job is being able to engage with so many different aspects of this community and bringing this community together. We're hyper local. We do sell all the advertising. There's not an outside group that we sell the advertising rights to that then goes out and sell it. So we're hyper local. We rely on this community. We not want them to know that they're welcome here and that everybody's welcome here. I joke all the time that everybody gets a night, but we like dogs the most. They get 3 nights. but whether it's a bark in the park or some cultural nights, it has to fit within the framework of how we do business, but from Pride Night to Military Appreciation Night to First Responders Night to our Latino nights to our dog nights. This year we had a cat night. Getting nonprofit groups to work in the concession stands, to We Care Wednesdays, where we bring in 10 nonprofits. Now this year we're doing it, one Wednesday a month. We have usually two homestands in a month, so that they can have a game day experience at no charge. They can sell tickets. They can raise some money. Everybody needs to be welcome, and everyone needs this to be a safe space. And we work with over 400 different local organizations. Scooch is everywhere. We donate, to as much as we can. A lot of it's in kind with tickets for fundraisers. And, we did the Meet the Mets fundraiser, and we're able to give, half of that money. We raised about $12,000. We give 6 to the Challengers and 6 to the Police Athletic League. And we're already thinking about who we can donate to, expand that to for next year. It's just important to think that is the kind of grassroots marketing that you can do, that all it costs you is your time and your energy, for the most part, to be at the Cancer Walk, to be at the Special Olympics, to be at the Latino Festival, to be at the Juneteenth Festival, to be at the Memorial Day Parade. It just takes your time and a little bit of energy. And there you can go and shake some people's hands, and you can kiss some babies, and you can invite people out to the ballpark. And that's where you talk to people, and they say, oh, we had a good time last night. Or, geez, I've been meaning to get out there. Well, when's the last time you were at a game? 1980. You've had like 1,000 opportunities since then, and you've got another 60 this year. So hopefully we'll see you out at the ballpark. So I embrace that hand-to-hand. I call it hand-to-hand combat. I want to get out there, be seen, be visible. That's why we're in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. It's kind of it's us coming out of hibernation from the winter. We go in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We throw out canned koozies with opening day on there and beads. We have a good time, and people know the Syracuse Mets are coming.
So you may have already alluded to this, and I apologize if I'm retreading territory, but everyone knows you as Jason Smorol, the face of the Syracuse Mets, the person who's out there shaking hands, kissing babies, eating pierogies, whatever it is you need to do.
Pierogi, no S.
Oh, sorry, eating pierogi, coming from the Polish man of the year.
I had the Pole of the Year, so you have to believe me.
I totally believe you. Just quick shout out to Mike Borkowski, who I know you've collaborated with, and he's a friend of mine who was on the podcast. But we had an epic conversation about pierogies before that interview started. Sorry, pierogi. But my question is this: I also am lucky enough to know you as husband and father to Julia and Mary and Rachel, your wife. And I'm curious about as somebody who is so just dedicated and focused on the city of Syracuse and really just being a positive role model for it. I'm curious about, in your own sort of family unit, with Julia and Mary, like, what lessons do you hope that you demonstrate to them?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Hard work, grind, and I think that I've instilled that in them, and the credit goes to Rachel for keeping the girls together. If they wanted to see Dad, they had to come to the ballpark, so she'd get the girls up. And the last place Rachel wanted to be was the ballpark, but she'd bring the girls here and on a Sunday or a game day with their friends, and so they could see Dad, but I think that you see, how well Julia and Mary are doing, and it's not just me, it's their mother as well, is that we grind, we work, we show up, and you get up every day and you go to work. And I learned it from my father, and they're learning it from me, is that you just go to work, you have a good attitude, you work hard, you play hard, you enjoy life. There's so much things that are out of your control that you can just control yourself. You can control your work ethic. You can control your attitudes, and Mary is taking that to nursing right now, and she seems to be thriving and successful. And Julia right now has been working at Recess Coffee, and she's been working there, and she shows up every day, and she's now the manager. She probably hates being the manager, but she has those skills and that dedication and that commitment to, work and doing good work. So, and Rachel's the same way. And she didn't learn it from me, but she's a great, worker, and she works hard, and we play hard, and we know that our family's important for us. And you got to have that. This job makes it tough for balance, but we found our way. So when the girls were young, we focused all on family and that balance, and giving the girls a good upbringing. And at the same time, they saw me go to work for Hilties, go to work every day, put the red shirt on, you get in the van and you go. And now when I decided to take the job is because, the girls were older, and we were in a better place with them, and it's been, you look at these old pictures of the girls, one of my favorite pictures is one of the first years we're getting ready for the St. Patrick's Day parade. I think it was 2015, and there was 3 feet of snow on the field. I have a great picture of Julia and Mary with me on the field, and the snow is past their waists. John Stewart, the groundskeeper, is trying to snow blow the field. There was so much snow in the field, it was less than 2 or 3 weeks till we opened up the season. And we look back on that and we laugh that we made it to opening day, but there's that picture of Julia and Mary at the ballpark.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks. And I hope everyone can take away a little spirit of the Smorol grind with them after this interview. At the end of the show, I always like to wrap things up just by seeing if there's anything that we haven't covered that you sort of want to share. Is there anything that we haven't tackled that you want to put out there?
I think that, we've got is the opportunity, that we have here is that there's still people that haven't been to a game. There's still people that say, "Oh, I don't like baseball." And the most important thing that we like to tell those people is that we specialize in people who don't like baseball. Star Wars night where, Danny Tripodi and then you guys love to come and help us out. Margaritaville night. Do you like margaritas? Because we have Margaritaville night. Do you have a dog? Well, we have nights you can bring your dog. Do you like free T-shirts? Do you like fireworks? Do you like hot dogs? Do you like pierogi? We have fantastic pierogi here. So we specialize in people that don't like baseball. We specialize in people that like to have fun. And if you like it quiet, come on a Tuesday, have some tacos, sit way the heck up in the third. Sit where Rachel sits. Sit next to Rachel. She sits on the last row of the 300 section with her can of Budweiser and her crossword puzzle. And it's her little peace and quiet and time of Zen. So we have something for everybody over here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the people that I've already given a shout out to that really make this place go, and they all work super hard and they do a fantastic job. We're a family over here, and we couldn't do it without them.
I love it. And I do want to also just say one thing that I think is important, which is people are so food motivated and getting in is cheap and the food there is extremely affordable. But you guys have also done such a great job of making it vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free friendly. And I think that, a lot of people who I hear who are kind of hesitant to go out and explore the entertainment options of Central New York are like, I don't know if that's something I can eat or whatever, but it really is just so allergen sensitive and welcoming.
But not good enough, because we're supposed to have gluten-free buns at the main stand all the time. And I saw my guy, I'm looking for I have his picture that his son made for me, but he brought his own gluten-free buns. He's like, "Smorol, I'm just going to tell you, you tell me there's gluten-free buns there, and these guys mess around with you all the time. I just brought my own." But yeah, we have, but nobody does what we do. Nobody does Dollar Thursday. Nobody does Kids Eat Free Sunday. Nobody does Fizzy Fridays where you get 2 free drinks. It's we're trying to give you the pump. That's why we're the most amazing show on dirt.
Love it. You guys even had a Taylor Swift night earlier in the season. So
well, we got rained out, so it's coming back up. We had to reschedule it.
Well, there's lots of good things coming. Jason, for anybody who's interested in learning more about you or the Syracuse Mets, where is the best place to find them online?
SyracuseMets.com. Follow us on the socials. The Hot Dog Girls do a great job on our socials, and SyracuseMets.com for all the promotions, deal ticket information. If you have any questions because you can't find it because it's too hard to understand because there's so many buttons on the website, give us a call, and we'll talk you through it.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks so much for being on the show. It means a lot.
Thanks, Ryan.
Jason Smorol, one of my favorite people. I hope he's now one of your favorite people too. Just a fascinating human and somebody who, comes up with just delightful taglines. I'm now going to forever think about the Syracuse Mets as the #1 baseball team that specializes in people who don't like baseball. I can't think of a better way to market anything. So Jason, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for creating welcoming environments for everybody. And I can't wait to get in there and explore all your vegan food. I hope it's delicious. For people who've listened to the show before, you'll know that this next little spot is where I normally announce who is going to be my guest in 2 weeks. And the truth is, there will not be a guest in 2 weeks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge statistics. I'm going to acknowledge that over the summer, listenership tends to go down, which isn't necessarily fair to my guests, and quite frankly, isn't worth the inertia it takes to keep the show going on a consistent publishing schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the show on hiatus for a little while and see what amazing connections I can make in the meantime. I'm very excited to put more conversations forward, but they'll likely come to you in the fall. Because the truth is, there's less listeners in the summer because all of you are out doing fun stuff. You don't need all the podcasts. And you know what? That's great. Technology disconnection is important. So over the next few months, I hope you, in your own life, make space for conversation. Don't worry about me. I'll still be around. You can find me on social media, The World of Ryan Zlomek on Facebook, at Ryan Zlomek on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, or you can always email me, meditations@ryanzlomek.com. I'm excited to catch up on some reading I've been missing out on, to do some other projects with microphones and film, and just see what comes out of it. But remember, the goal of this show, 50 episodes in and 50 episodes in the future, is to ensure that we learn from those around us. So don't forget that your goal this summer is to make space for conversation, because you just might learn something. Have a fantastic day, stay warm, play some baseball, and don't forget you're awesome. Thanks so much for listening.